So the first question we wanted to ask you is, what made you want to become a PA?
From my childhood, I was motivated to do medicine. When I was in third grade, one of my best friends had a motor vehicle accident, leading to a very disturbed outcome. In short, after the accident, he was never the same person due to head trauma. My desire to do medicine originated after that event. My aspiration to get involved in a profession that will allow me to obtain medical history, perform a physical exam, diagnose the condition, and then determine the treatment plan. That's exactly what I do as a PA.
Great. So the second question is, what drew you to practice in primary care?
That's a very interesting question. When I was in PA school, I studied cardiology more than any other organ systems because I knew that our board exam will include about 16% of cardiology questions. Then I fell in love with cardiology, and I did one of my rotations in cardiology too. As I was exploring further, even though I wanted to do cardiology, and then I knew there is a bigger need for psychiatry or primary care. So I was thinking about both psychiatry and primary care, mainly because of the dire provider shortages. I wanted to be a part of the solution. Finally, I decided to do primary care because I recognized I will be able to practice some psychiatry through primary care, but not the other way around.
That makes sense for sure. So how did you first learn about the National Health Service Corps, and why did you ultimately decide to apply?
My employer was a rural health system. They offered a loan repayment program as an employee benefit. In addition, they had another program. The employer pays half, 50%, and the state of California pays 50% towards your student loans when you work in this rural health system. So I was in both those programs. So I thought that I will not be eligible to apply for NHSC loans. So I didn't really know about that. And then one of the regional directors, we were having a conversation one day, and then she mentioned, that is completely a separate program, and we are eligible sites, and you will be able to apply for NHSC even though you have other programs going on. So that is how I found out about NHSC. I knew about NHSC, but I didn't know that I was eligible because I was, in other loan repayment programs. But that's how I found out, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to make too, because I'm sure there's other people out there that might think, if I'm eligible or participating in loan programs, will I be able to do more than one? But it's definitely cool to know that you can take advantage of a wide range of different options for paying back your loans.
Very true. Yes.
Yeah. So what was the application process for NHSC like?
It was an easy process. The application process itself has direct access to student loans. Therefore, the system itself uploads the loans automatically during the application process. The process probably takes about 1 hour. If you have to enter your loans manually, time can vary based on how many loans you have, depending on the number of loans. But I would say it's about 1 hour, and it's a very easy process, user-friendly.
Good to hear. So what advice would you give to students who are interested in applying for the NHSC?
I can think of 4 different types of students with this question. Type 1, some students have a desire to work in underserved because they are from underserved. They will continue to practice in underserved. They should really apply for NHSC. Type 2, some students want to work in underserved for a few years and be a part of the solution to alleviate the provider shortage. I encourage them to apply for NHSC loan. Type 3, some students want to work in underserved but live in a big city. That is actually not a difficult task to accomplish. For example, Fresno is one of the biggest cities in California. Someone can live in Fresno and work in underserved area easily. There are many underserved areas close to Fresno. They may need to commute about 30 to 45 minutes, but that is easily, doable. Then I can think about, type 4, other type of students. Some students are interested only because this is an excellent way to pay off their student loans fast. I recommend them to make this commitment carefully, because if they decide to leave prior to completing the commitment, the penalty is rather extreme. So I want them to make that, decision carefully.
Yeah, for sure. So this next question was the one I was most excited to ask you about, given your background working in underserved communities and how long you've been doing it. But what would you say to a student or a graduate who's hesitant about the service commitment due to salary concerns or challenging patient populations?
As far as my knowledge and experience, I believe it's more favorable to work in underserved. Let me demonstrate my point. Let's say someone has 2 different job opportunities, one in Central Valley, California, where I practice, and the other one is in Bay Area, San Francisco area. The salary is going to be higher in the Bay Area, San Francisco area. However, if you calculate all the expenses, including real estate, cost of living, it is much less here in Central Valley. That will lead to more saving. Home values are more than double in Bay Area compared to Central Valley. So you pay much bigger mortgage to live in Bay Area. So I assure these students not to be very concerned about the salaries when it comes to underserved areas versus big cities. As far as challenging patient populations, I think it is important to make sure that you will have a good supportive network. When you interview for the job, make sure, learn about the practice setting that they will be starting at. I can give example from my first job. They asked me to work in this small town, and I knew there are 2 other primary care physicians are there. One came on Monday and one came on Wednesday half day. So I knew rest of the time I will be there by myself. And as a new PA, it was I thought that will be very challenging, and I was not ready to take that chance, take the risk. So I told my employer, I'll be happy to, go to that clinic, but I would like to have some transition. So I asked them whether they will be able to send me to a clinic where there are some experienced clinicians every day, so that I will be able to, observe them a little bit and get to know their system. And then when I'm ready, go to the clinic that they originally had discussed about. And that's exactly what they did. And I was able to work in a different clinic for several weeks. And then when I was ready, I told them, and then I went to the other clinic after that. So my message is ask for help when necessary.
Yeah, and I think that's some really good advice, especially when you're first starting out in your career. Sometimes you think to yourself like, oh, like I'll just stay quiet and figure it out. But, you know, if you don't communicate what you need, then your needs can't get met. So, and sometimes we forget. So I think that's important to reiterate for sure. So what has been your proudest moment practicing in underserved communities so far?
Proudest moment. Well, about 5 years ago, as you know, PA profession is, it's a young profession. About 5 years ago, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. That was in 2017, I believe. During the celebration, NCCPA recognized 50 PAs in the country as part of the celebration. It was a very proud and humble moment that I was one of them. My contribution to rural medicine was probably the main reason that I was selected. So I want to say that was my proudest moment.
I don't blame you. That's awesome. Congrats on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the last question that I have for you is, what has kept you practicing in an underserved community for over a decade?
It is a very rewarding experience. In my case, I am from a very small town called Talwila. It's located in Sri Lanka. I think my decision to work in underserved has a lot to do with my personal background. When you work in underserved, you really get to know the families in the community. 11 years ago, a newborn that I had seen is now 11 years old. You continue to witness their growth and milestone. You have an opportunity to, guide them, make impact. So I really like that aspect. Then, you get to help patients with medical emergencies, such as ectopic pregnancy, appendicitis, or even heart attack. You are the first person that they will seek for help. And so, you have a pretty significant role to play when you encounter those, cases. Then, you get to help people with chronic medical conditions, such as hypertension, diabetes, HIV. Then, you might be the first person to share a sad news, someone with malignancy, you know the person, you have seen the family, and that's a difficult experience. And, you are the person to, share that news and console them. So in rural communities, you have a lot of those opportunities that you work with very closely with your patients. Then, I just read an article indicating that prevalence of smoking has increased immensely in underserved communities. So when you work in underserved, you are in a position to make an intervention with these types of problems. You'll be able to talk to your patients about their smoking and hopefully help them quit smoking. When you work in underserved, you become a hope for many people in the community. So the satisfaction you have is very palpable. There are many families that I see belong to 3 generations, children, their parents, and grandparents. When you practice medicine with both evidence-based medicine and compassionate care, your patients share their experience with the community. So it is very rewarding that you are in a position to make a difference every day. I have been practicing for close to 12 years now. I have been a clinical preceptor for about 9 years. I continue to train PA students. Some of them decide to work in underserved areas, and then some of them have told me that they were inspired to work in underserved areas during the clinical training that they had with me. So that is another very rewarding, feeling. that I have had during my career. So these are some of the few reasons come to my mind right now. If I can go back to 2010, that's the year I started practicing as a PA, and start all over again, I would still choose the same path, working in underserved.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me about all this today. Really appreciate it.